Cool. All right. How do you do, everyone? Yo, what's up? It's your boy. I'm back. Uh, I've been. Whoops. Whoops. I've been on the run lately. I've been out of this country. I went. I went to Mexico. I had. It was awesome. Yes. Somebody noticed. Look at me. My face is peeling. Uh, it was awesome. I highly recommend. Yeah. I went to Cabo San Lucas. Well, Cabo San Lucas. Huh? Yes, Baja California. It was so like I didn't think I'd be the kind of person. I'm not a beach dude at all. I'm very much sit in my house and just kind of stew guy, or or like I bike. Like I like cycling. I did not think I would like lying on a beach, and I was wrong. Oh my god, it's so nice. Yo, it is so much better than this. I'll tell you that. It, it is like if I had to pick between lecturing and being on a beach, I like any day of the week. Genuinely, any day of the week, I would pick the beach. Except for today, because I love being with you. Oh, this is so much fun. I'm so I'm so glad to be back. Yeah. I did tan a bit though. My girlfriend immediately burned. She turned bright, splotchy red, and I turned golden brown. And she was really mad at me for a little while, but then she turned around. Now she's like egg washy. She looks like a bun. Like what? No, it's like cute, like an egg washed bun. um, but yeah, I had I am recording, yeah. Just taking a second to get into it. I, I mean, don't worry, we're gonna have like an actual lecture today. Um, I had so many margaritas. I'd never had a margarita before, ever. Um, we went on a booze cruise, or rather, we went snorkeling on this boat, and I saw a bachelorette party dance with some random group of young Canadian guys, right? I saw infidelity. It was kind of heartbreaking. It was a little tough. What else did I see? I saw fish. Yeah, I saw fish. In fact, I'm not gonna do this for the main lecture, but I think the breakout's gonna be like organizing all the things I did in college. But yeah, pictures of fish and all that. No, I probably won't do that. How have y'all been? Pretty good, I hope. Today is week 5. No, 4. Yeah, oh no. Dan is like, did I sleep through an entire week? Oh no. Week 4, day 2. Week 4, day 2. We're gonna do interesting stuff today. Today is SQL from our apps. Okay. We have a couple goals today. We're gonna look at what the goals are in a second. First of all, though, I want to ask you about what the heck did you do yesterday? The same thing. It's just the same day over and over again. Yeah, it just never ends. Well, I heard sequel. Yeah, you did sequel. What does sequel stand for? Sure. Sequel stands for SQL. Yes. It also stands for something else. Structured query language. Right? Structured query language. You can get pretty familiar with SQL. Right? I'll be totally honest. SQL, not my main forte. You know? I know just enough to kind of like get along with it. And then I move on with my life. Right? So that's going to be one of the themes of this week and really moving on with the course is like you can kind of pick and choose the things that you like about being a web developer and specialize in that, right? I'm going to use the term T-shaped developer, right? A T-shaped dev, like T, or if you're anybody here into like bodybuilding, like T-shaped people, that's what you're like aiming for. Thanks. So we're going to talk about what that means in a sec. But a little bit about structured query language. What does SQL do? What's it for? Databases. Right? We do stuff with databases. And what can we specifically use SQL for in terms of databases? Yeah, cool. That's actually exactly what I'm looking for. The CRUD actions. Hey, Betta. Morning. It was great. Yeah. CRUD actions, right? That's the most important thing. Is we look at a database, we say a database is somewhere where I want to store a bunch of stuff. And I need some way of communicating with that database, right? Whatever that database is. A database could be, we've started working with Postgres, but a database could also be a book. Okay? A database could be a wall that you when people are in prison and they like etch stuff onto the walls with like chalk, or like in movies, right? Like that could be a database. You're like keeping track of how long you've been in like Game of Thrones, where Tyrion's locked in that room, like that kind of stuff. A wall that you etch stuff onto, right? A database could be a trusted friend, right? A database is just a place that I'm storing information into. So a database could be, hey, Joe, I need to buy milk. Right? And then later you ask Joe, hey, what did I need to buy? And Joe's like, you need to buy milk. Right? It's a trusted friend. It's just a place where I'm storing stuff into, right? But we need some protocol. We need some protocol for how that communication between you and the place where the data is being stored can be communicated with, right? So whether it's a book or Postgres or a wall or trusted friend, right? We need these CRUD actions, right? And SQL allows us to communicate those CRUD actions, such as create a table, right? Like that's a thing that we can do, or insert a document, right? Or delete. Is it delete? Delete a document. Drop. This is what I mean when I say I forget what SQL is. I just have to Google this all the time, right? But the basic kind of feeling is that I know I can create, read, update, and destroy things in a place, okay? And SQL is going to give me the tools for that. SQL is also like a little bit beasted up, right, in terms of cruddy stuff, because it also has these things called joins, right? It lets me correlate, like have relations between different collections of items, right? So I might have, for example, a bunch of authors. And I might also have a bunch of books, right? And I might want some way to say, hey, get me all of the books by one author or something, right? And I might need some way of like relating that stuff, right? So maybe I have a books table and an authors table and an author books table, right? That joins the stuff in between or something like that, right? Or maybe I just have authors and books, and when I say join, I stitch that information together in my results. Okay? And that's just something cool about SQL, okay? That it lets me do that. Now, SQL is neat. SQL is neat for a couple reasons. The first reason that I'll say it's neat is because SQL can be used in a bunch of different places. So I said that SQL might be used to be talking to like databases, right? That database might be Postgres. That database might also be MySQL, just another database management system, right? It's like Postgres but different. It might also be MariaDB, right? It might also be SQLite. It might also be SQL Server by Microsoft. Right? There's so many different database management systems. Right? These are big programs that manage your data to which you can talk to using SQL. Right? So this is probably something you talked about a little bit yesterday. Is that SQL is not specific for Postgres. Right? It's a language that can be used with various different SQL databases. Right? We're using Postgres, right? It's fine. They're all the same, you know. barely really any difference between all of these. The main thing that ties these dudes together is that they're all databases, right? They're all database management systems. They can all speak SQL. That's cool because there are some databases such as MongoDB, not an SQL database, right? You're going to have to learn a different language to talk to this. But if you learn SQL, you can talk to all of these different database systems. All of them. Awesome. Okay. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that all of these database management systems, they're all relational, right? Meaning they're built up out of tables, right? And these tables are, for the most part, all going to have primary keys, and they may also have foreign keys referring to other tables. Cool. All right. So just a quick kind of review of conceptually what SQL, or some people call it SQL, what that means to us. Now, are there any kind of lingering questions from yesterday that you would like kind of answered? How did you find the intro to SQL? Did you do all that like SQL Zoo stuff? All right, it's good stuff. What's that? It's pretty hard. Yeah, it's pretty tough. Now, it's a whole different language, right? And I think one of the things that makes it difficult, as opposed to some of the other languages that you're going to learn, like you're going to learn Ruby, right? You're going to learn Ruby in week 7. But one of the things that makes SQL, in my opinion, tougher than Ruby, right, is that SQL lives in its own new kind of paradigm, right? It's got a different way of doing things, and a different kind of way of seeing the world than JavaScript, or as you will see in week 7, Ruby. So I'm going to put languages into two kind of buckets. I'm going to say that some languages are imperative, and some languages are declarative. Right? The world is a little bit more complicated than I'm going to put it right now, but in short, an imperative language, is this something that whoever did yesterday's lecture talked about yet? So cool. So did you see the word declarative yesterday? Cool. But are you comfortable with that? What that means, or cool? I don't want to waste your time. Is the thing, right? So an imperative language is a language where I say you do this and then this, do this thing and then do this thing. Here's a variable. Now here's a variable. Here's a loop. Do a loop. Right? Where I'm actually giving instructions. Right? I'm saying do this, do this, do this, do this. Right? Declarative is going to mean, I don't care how you get it done, just do it. It's the Nike approach. Just do it. Right? So in an imperative language, if I need to collect a bunch of data and put it in an array, I might write a for loop to go through some array and filter it bit by bit and put it in, right? So say, as an example, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as just numbers. Oop. So I have const. Just array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm asked maybe to make an array of just the even ones from here, right? I might start off and go, okay, well here's let new array, const even array. Maybe start it off at empty, and then I might do a for loop that goes for let I equals 0 from I is less than r.length I plus. And then I go through here and I say, okay, if r I modulo 2 equals 0, so that's if that number is even, then push it to the array. Okay, and then at the end of the thing, even r is just the evens. Does this idea kind of make sense? right? Where I'm giving out the instructions for actually doing this stuff, right? I'm saying what it means to be even, right? I'm saying I need you to go through every single one of the elements, right? A declarative way of doing the exact same thing would be, we've got our array, and then for my even array, what I might do is say our maybe dot filter, and then in here I might say return only the ones where whoops, this would be elem. And now even r is just the evens. Right? Can we just take a second to like look at this and stare at it? I did not say how a filter function should work. Right? I didn't say. I don't care. The filter function might have little, goblins and stuff going around inside of here. There might be, this might go off to the cloud. I don't know, right? I have no idea how the filter function works. I'm just saying, hey, filter, and here's a query for how you should filter it. Hey, you should filter for just give me the elements that are even. Right? So whereas before I'm saying the instructions, and afterwards here I'm just saying the result of what I want. Right? This is what declarative is going to mean, right? And I think that's part of what makes SQL tough for people sometimes, is that you're not seeing a lot of the work that's happening, right? Especially when you're talking about joins and stuff, you're not seeing the work that's happening. When you're talking about group bys and where clauses and all that, right? But just be comfortable with the fact that you're declaring things and you're offloading this work to somebody else, right? I'm offloading all that work to somebody else. They've already written all the loops, right? You just need to state things, and then it'll end up working out the way you want it to. So this distinction between imperative and declarative doesn't just have like a bit of importance in SQL. It's also important in JavaScript, right? And that's something that I do want you to think about, is that this thing here, right, can be a lot more legible than this thing up here. Right? By writing more declarative code, I can look at the code and there's some semantic meaning to the thing that I'm reading here. Right? There's some actual meaning embedded in the sentence that says, hey, take the array and filter it, and here's how you should filter. Okay? Sure, I need to understand what the modulo operator does and whatever, but array.filter, that's pretty self-explanatory. Right? Filter the array. Whereas over here, I have no idea what the heck is going on. Right? Zero clue. Right? So you should be striving wherever you can, right, to write more declarative code. Right? So something that I do want you to think about going forward, maybe during your midterms, is, hey, can I be using map for this? Can I be using for each, or what do you call it? Filter, reduce, right? Can I use those things? Right? Can I wrap my logic in special helper functions? Okay, that's something that you've already been doing through TinyApp and Tweeter, right? But we're going to force you to do that less. Like, you need to now take the initiative on that, especially with the midterms, is make nice helper functions, right? So the point of today's lecture is not so much talking about, SQL in our applications, because this is going to be the same as Mongo. Right? You're going to see that there's very little new in terms of the actual technical stuff. Right? What I want you to see is how we end up wrapping functions, right? We end up wrapping, code to have nice helper functions, right? And how that can help you in your midterm projects. Does that sound good? Sweet. So today's lecture probably not going to be super long. Then we've got the breakout, and that's actually going to be a bit of a beast, but it'll be a good time. So more kind of nailed down here. And I'm going to move T-shape dev just a little down. The main goals for today are, first of all the SQL, every single little bit of SQL that you've done so far, all of that can be written inside of our applications. right? So you don't need to use the PSQL command line all the time, right? Awesome. The other thing is understanding that our queries that we're going to be running, right? We're going to see this in a sec. The queries that we're running have asynchronous execution. Asynchronous, right? Which we already saw in Mongo, right? Whoever did the lecture on week 4, day 3, did they talk about async execution? Dope. Did they do the thing where like they have people come up and run around? Okay, we might do that. And how we deal with async execution, especially with errors. And the last thing is understanding and sanitizing user input. Right? And there's a little comic that I'll show you to understand what the sentence even means. Okay, so before we do these 3 things, I want to talk about the T-shaped dev. Right? And we could go T-shaped. Nah, I was going to look up like T-shaped bodybuilding to really kind of hammer that in. A T-shaped dev is going to mean that generally pretty broad understanding of the web development world, right? You got to have a good understanding of the landscape, right? Oh, this is what front end means. This is what back end means, right? You don't need to know all of the frameworks, right? You know Express, cool, fine. We're going to make you learn Rails as well, just because. You don't need to learn all of the frameworks. Right? You just need to like know words, like, oh, what's GraphQL? Right? Later on, not in our boot camp, but like later on in your life, you're going to hear buzzwords, and you just need to be able to go like, oh, okay, cool. I don't need to know how to use it. I just need to know that it exists. Right? You got this really broad kind of understanding, and you're comfortable with stuff, and then you pick one place where you really want to dive in. And you really want to make yourself the expert in that thing, right? So that when people say, hey, ooh, I need somebody to help me out with GraphQL stuff, you do this. You're like, hello, hi, I'm, I've been training for this my whole life, right? Like, you want to get to that point where you feel really comfortable with one thing, right? That's not going to happen during the boot camp. That's not even going to happen this quarter, right? It might happen this year. It might happen next year. It's like a journey for you, right? And that kind of shape, that's your T, right? So pretty broad understanding, and then maybe 1 or 2 specific pillars of expertise, right? To make you a nice solid developer, right? A nice pillar of expertise. And some people end up picking databases as their pillar of expertise, right? That's what they end up picking. I did not. Databases, like I said, not my strongest suit. What am I good at? I'm going to have to think about that for a little while. But I'm good at everything. No, I like React and front-end frameworks. Which you're going to deal with next week. So T-shaped dev, that's what you're kind of like aiming for. Okay. Now, time to like actually dive into a little bit of code. Let's see, is there anything else I want to say in here? Right. Oh, I don't know if this was mentioned yesterday, but I wanted to make a note of this. SQL was created with the goal that like developers, like y'all people, you wouldn't actually be writing SQL. That was the idea. The idea was that SQL would be written by like business analysts and like data analysts, right? That was the goal. That's part of why it's so different from the languages that you'll use as a web developer, right? It's because it's not built with people like you in mind. Okay. However, the world doesn't really end up working out that way, and like you need to be somewhat comfortable with SQL. Maybe you're not going to be writing tons of queries all the time, but you need to understand kind of what's going on. Doesn't really matter what kind of developer you are. Web, desktop, mobile, some amount of comfortableness is important, because all of our software is for the most part just a combination of data and behavior, right? There's some data, and we need that data to behave somehow, or we need to be able to interact with that data with some behavior, right? So data is like a huge part of especially, web apps. Doesn't always mean that we're going to be dealing with SQL, but some form of databases is important. Okay. So how did, now that we've gotten past all this, how did your like Mongo lecture, I guess, on week 4, day 3, and in turn, like, how did your tweeter, how did you interact with the database, with the Mongo database in Tweeter? So there's some interaction going on. What's that? Right. So you had like a data helpers layer, right? The data helpers layer was wrapping. Actually, I might actually have something like that here already. Data songs. Yeah. So you had some data helpers layer. This is part of a demo that we're going to look at. I've called it make songs data or whatever, and it receives some client. But the important part for you is that you were using the node Mongo connector, right? We couldn't just talk with Mongo. We needed to be able to say, where are you at? There you go. We needed to tell Node that it had to connect to Mongo. So we went ahead to Node, Mongo, and there was the MongoDB Node.js driver, right? This one right here. So you spent a little bit of time in here, not a ton. Okay? The important thing here is that there's a wrapper around a connection that your Node client is making to your, in this case, it was your Mongo database that was just running on your machine. Okay? So these database systems, Mongo, Postgres, they're programs that run on your computer. They just run. And you can talk to them. And they might be programs that also run not on your computer, on somebody else's computer. Okay? And you can connect to those and talk to them. So I want to connect to the Postgres stuff with Node, and lucky me, Node Postgres. All right, somebody's done all the work already for me to set up the Node Postgres connector. Right, it's an npm module that I can install. Right, Node Postgres modules for interacting with your Postgres database. Right, it has support for callbacks. You know what callbacks are at this point. Cool. It has support for promises. Do you know what promises are? Sounds familiar, but like not really. You haven't had a lecture on promises yet. Async await, you don't even know what async await is. There's all this stuff that you can learn, but you can do everything you need with callbacks. That's totally fine. And we'll just look at the documentation real quick. Okay. Is there anything on this right now that immediately freaks you out? You feel the sweat beating up on your neck, right? Just no. Nothing, really? Y'all are fearless. There should be at least 3 words in here that make you want to gag and throw up. No? What's that? Await. And sure, new as well. There we go. Await and new. I guess by 3 I meant await. But new, right? New as well. Okay, so new, we're going to be using it to create a new thing. I think you have a lecture next week on this. No, not next week, the week after, on the word new. For right now, just copy it in. It's fine. But await. Oh no. Like we haven't seen this at all. So this is the main documentation. Not a good start. Not a good start to using the Node PG documentation here. But I can scroll down a little bit, and it's the same code, but it's written without the await syntax. So I'll tell you that await is a special thing in JavaScript that you will be learning about, right? Just not today. You will be learning about it to deal with asynchronous things. But we're going to keep dealing with asynchronous things the same way we have this entire time, which is with callbacks, meaning I give somebody some code to run later. Right? So this code here is saying, hey, get me the client from the Postgres module, which I'm going to have to npm install in a second. Right? Create a new client. Connect the client. Right? Connect the client, and then it says, hey, client, make a query. Make a query, and here is the query. Select $1 text message. I have no idea what's going on here. What we're going to do is we're going to copy this thing. Right? I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to go ahead and make a new little demo folder. We're going to call this one Too Cool to Demo. Yeah, I made a folder named Kaba. It was going to be like a demo of like pictures of me on the beach, but my girlfriend told me it was a stupid idea, so I'm not going to do that. Too Cool to Demo. In here, I'm just going to cd to it. Right, and I'm going to go npm init-y. Right, and the reason I do npm init-y is because I need to be able to npm install that Postgres thing. PG. Now I've installed Postgres. Right, I could try a couple different things. I could go into Node and I could say, hey, const pg equals require pg, and just see what that is. That is all of PG. It's got a client. It's got a query thing. It's got, what else does it have? Defaults. Got a bunch of stuff. Now, I'm going to be actually writing scripts for this stuff. I'm not going to be working in the REPL very much. But I wanted to hop into the REPL just to take a look at what it was. So we're going to leave this. We're going to go index.js. And now I'm going to go to my index.js here and paste in just the code that I got from the documentation. Right? Good place to start. Like, if this thing doesn't work, then I might as well scrap and go home for the day. Right? Or just look for a new module or something. You know, node index.js. And I run it. Hot diggity dog, right? Got myself a hello world out. Now, once it's run and it hasn't thrown an error, this is where I might dive in and go like, okay, like let's see what the code actually does. Maybe it stole my credit card, who knows? Just random code that I copied and pasted from the internet and ran. Const client require PG. Oh, heads up. I think it's totally safe for us to like copy code from documentation, right? From the actual docs of the people who made the library. I don't think it's super safe to just copy and paste and run code from Stack Overflow or from random tutorials on the internet. Like, that's a little bit different. Just use your judgment, right? But here I'm like, I just want to see if it works in the first place. So I'm getting the client, I'm saying make a new client, connect to it, and then query. There's something interesting happening with the query here, right? Select $1 text as message. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this. I'm going to remove all of this right now. And I'm going to go here, I'm going to go hello world. Right? I just want to see if this still works. No. Ah. Hey, what did I do? Oh, whoops, I forgot to do text, okay. Oh man. Select, does this have to be? Just need a second because I wanted to show you something pretty neat. There we go, okay. So, strings in SQL have to be done with the single quotes. Right? So since the documentation that I pasted over, or sorry, the stuff from the documentation that I pasted over made this string here with single quotes, I had to write hello world in here. So let me just copy this and go back a couple so you can see what the difference is between before and after. Okay. So the first one up here, the second one here is the one that I copied in. And it says select $1 : text. And then it says hello world outside of that string. Right? This is taking like a value and it's putting it outside. And in this string here, it's going to say, hey, replace $1 with whatever that text is. The thing is, I want to talk about what that is later on. I want to talk about that later, like in the second half of the lecture. So I'm rewriting this right now as this. Select hello world : text as message. Right? And when I run this, that's what I get. Right? And the thing about this is that when you're in Postgres, you can do select this whole thing here. That's fine. And what I end up getting back, if I made this query in PSQL, okay, is I get a table back called, a table with one column called message, right? And it only has one row that says hello world. Right? There's a bunch of these commands that you can make in SQL, right, that will return back, and I don't know if this is something you saw yesterday, that will return back text. If you ask for text, it'll return back the time, right? We'll do math for you, right? You're just going to have to write them as select queries. Every single time you make a thing in, like you make a query in SQL, you always get a table back. Right? It'll form a table for you. And the table is built up of rows. So here I'm seeing there's one row that was returned. And the same thing's going to happen with my node Postgres stuff, is the response that I get back, right? So notice that I had to pass a callback to this. The response that I get back, if I was to go console.log response and maybe comment out the rest of this, the response that I get back is this beast of a thing. Whew. Among which there is a rows property. Right? So the response is going to have a bunch of rows. At the moment, maybe there's just one, but that's fine. And the row is going to be made up. The row is going to be made up of a bunch of objects, right? It's going to be like an array of objects. So an array of objects, and each object is going to go property being the column, right? And then value being like the value under that column for that row. Right? So I only get one row back, so I could ask for the very first row. Very first row, and I got a message. Hello world. Dope. That's cool. And then if I only want the message, then I could go message, because it's an object. Right? And that's something I want you to be really, really kind of mindful and conscious of. Right? Is in the Postgres like node module, when we make requests, we get back these rows that are going to be arrays. Oh, sorry, one array. Right? So rows is going to be an array of many objects. And inside of those objects, I can access the columns, right? Message, like this. Right? But I don't want you to get lost in the fact that we're dealing with databases, right? This is still all your typical JavaScript-y stuff. So if I wanted to, right, I could write this neat little ternary here. Right? Because one of the things that you're going to notice with the callback that I pasted in is that the callback takes two things. One of them is like the result. You might write it as res. Sometimes, respond. I think result makes sense to me. But in the docs, they've written it as res. And the other one here is error. Error, right? Error. Well, you notice something really important. in JavaScript, when I'm putting an inline function like this, or when I'm making a function, it does not matter what order I put the things in the sense of, I could write this like that, and I could write this. It doesn't matter the name. If I was to call this res and error, that doesn't suddenly make this the error value, and it doesn't suddenly make this the result value, right? I need to know that the very first thing that gets passed in this callback is going to be a possible error, if there is an error. And the second thing is going to be the results, if there are results. Right? And what we're dealing with here is a pattern called an error first callback. Okay, error first. Right? We're going to talk about why we need to do this in a second. So here this is saying, hey, if there's an error, are y'all comfortable with ternaries? Is anyone not comfortable with ternary operators? Okay. If there's an error, right, print out the error stack. Right? This would be something that lives inside of error. Otherwise, print out the message. Right? So when I run this now, what I end up getting back is, just the message, hello world. But conceivably, if there was an error, I would see the error stack instead. Right? I just want to test this real quick. Boop, boop. So this now says, if there's an error, print out haha. Just a cheeky little haha, you made a mistake, right? Cheeky little error. And I caused an error by writing text instead of text. Right? So now when there's an error, it prints out haha. Right? Instead of the error stack. Now I do this. I get the actual error stack and I print it out. And I get the actual information for that error. Right? We're going to talk about why we have to do this, and then we're going to take a break. So when you did the Mongo stuff, did whoever taught that talk about the difficulties of dealing with asynchronous error handling? No? So JavaScript, what's that? Just callback hell, yeah. So JavaScript is different than really most other languages that you're going to deal with if you decide to learn other languages or work in other languages. Because JavaScript is by nature asynchronous. Right? JavaScript was built for the web. It was built for websites, right? The browser, where all sorts of things are all happening at the same time. Just stuff, little video here, little blinking thing here, interaction over here, chat box, whatever. There's all these different things that are happening all at the same time. So it makes sense in the structure of the language to be able to declare all these things that aren't connected to each other in time. Right? They're not happening in a synchronized way. Right? So the language has to be designed in a way that handles asynchrony properly. Right? Part of the reason for that on a browser is because if we had the language work synchronously, right, then anytime there was a network request, or anytime something was happening in your browser, it was getting data or processing something, then your page would freeze, right? Because you wouldn't be able to interact with the page until that data processing was done. The page would just lock. Right? So by design, since JavaScript needs to be run in the browser, it's been designed to work asynchronously, but that means we have to deal with these callbacks. Right? Other languages like Ruby, as you're going to see later on in the course, or in the program, they're synchronous, meaning I can say, get the data, then print the data. Right? Get the data, then make the data uppercase, and then print the data. Right? I can do all this stuff. Get data from here, then get data from here, then get data from here, then print it. Right? I can do that step by step. In JavaScript, though, I'm going to need to say, try to get the data. And then when you have it, If you could please also make it uppercase, and then if you could please console log it out. Right? You did that. Oof, you did that in week 2, right? With your get and print HTML, right? Where you had to put all that stuff. And the thing is, you're relinquishing control, right? As a developer, you're giving up the control of how your code's actually running, right? Because when you do a callback, when you're passing a callback, you're trusting that the person to whom you're giving the callback is going to run your callback eventually, right? You're giving up that, like, you have to have trust and faith, right? Right. So there's that, what do we call it? Inversion of control situation. This is not a thing that you need to know. I just want you to know that it's a word. Where we're flipping, like, the control, who gets to run that code, right? Now, this isn't always a good thing. It's not always a good thing, and that's why we're going to explore other ways of doing stuff in the like this in the future. But for right now, that's what we're going to need to do. So we're going to need to say, hey, try to get the data, and then eventually when you have it, console log it. But the thing is, dealing with errors in this way is tough, because getting the data might take, seconds, or it might take minutes. Who knows? It might be a really big query. So this callback might not be called for a while. If I was to wrap this code here, client query, if I was to wrap this with a try catch, right? Did you learn about try catch yet? No? Okay, so there's a thing. There's a thing in JavaScript that you're going to learn early next week. It goes, and I don't want you to fully understand this right now, being like upfront about this. There's a word called try in JavaScript, and you write some code in here, and it says just try it. It might not succeed, but just try it. Right? And if it fails, here is what you should do. Right? Just try it. And if it fails, here's what we should do, right? Let's make this relationship work. And if not, we'll go to counseling. That's the way I've always taught this. But I need to find a less kind of realistic, I don't know. Let's try to make it work. Otherwise, we'll catch the thing and we'll move on with our lives. Right? I'll try to lift these 2 plates. Otherwise, I'm going to find a spotter. Right? This thing here only works with synchronous code. So you're going to learn about this next week, but it only works with synchronous code. So if in here I wrote something like a query, PG or whatever, what's the thing? Client query? In the client. If I did my query here and then here's my callback, that's going to take however many minutes to run, right? It'll go right past the try. Like, it'll go through and it'll continue on. And then if this thing encounters an error, that error will be triggered outside of this try catch block, right? Again, I don't need you to understand exactly how try catch works. But the thing is that by the time an error pops up, we've passed this train. Like, we're gone. Right? So we need to register something to also do in case you have an error asynchronously, right? And the method that the Node community has decided on is this thing called error first callbacks. Right? It's a pattern. It's not a real thing. It's just something that, yo, Sebastian, got cookies. Thanks, man. It's not a real thing that exists in the language. It's just a pattern that developers have decided on. Right? So that's something I want you to be comfortable with, is the fact that when you make these callbacks, you need to have the word error in there. Right? We're going to explore this a little bit more as we move forward. Cool. Are there any questions so far? Sweet. Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. Maybe 12 minutes if I'm feeling, nice. And at 10:05, we'll get back together and actually see some database happening stuff. Cool. And then I've got a big demo. It's going to be a good time. Right. So, welcome back. When we left off, we've just been talking about, like, conceptually, at a high level, really what's going on. We're bringing in the Postgres module, right? The Node Postgres module that allows us to make, and we'd written all this code, all this stuff. No, where'd you go? Where'd you go? There you go. We'd written this stuff here. Postgres module allows us to bring in a connector to connect to the database and run queries, right? And we can run any arbitrary queries that we want through here. I want you to notice how little I did to connect to the database management system. I did not have to write a port. I didn't even necessarily even need to write a database name, right? I just said client connect. I didn't give it like a URL to connect to or something, because there's a bunch of defaults that are already baked in to the thing. Now I can override those defaults, and I can pass in some configuration. Oh no, you saw. Whoops. You didn't see anything. I can override those defaults. I want you to get comfortable with the Node Postgres documentation. I also don't want you to freak out when you see the word await. Right? Because you can do it. They're going to show you how to do something in callback way. And then the same thing in await. Right? I don't want you to learn what await does. Right? I just want you to see that the words select now and select now, they both show up here and here. Right? Meaning that these two are probably doing the same thing. And take the one that looks like something that you've learned, such as this callback situation. So, when we want to connect to a particular database, we can pass it in through like a configuration object to the client when we're creating the new client. Again, I know you're not comfortable with the word new, right? Just assume for right now that it's a way to construct a new thing given some configuration. So you're constructing a new thing that's a client type with maybe a particular user, particular host. This might be the URL that the database is on, because maybe it's not on your machine. Maybe it's on the cloud somewhere. The particular database that you're connecting to, what's the password that you're using, the port that it's running on. So just like how your Express server can run on any number of ports that you want to make it run on, you know, I go by default either 3000 or 1337. I like that. There's a couple chuckles. It's a good number. You can pick any number to run your Postgres database on. We have your database running already in Vagrant on a particular port. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it is. Like, I just can't remember, but it's the default port, so you don't need to configure that. What you might want to say is configure the particular database that you're connecting to, right? So in the little example that we did here when I copied over some code from the documentation, I didn't connect to a particular database, but I am going to do that now. Zoop, and close this, and yeah, we're going to go here. Okay, so here I am. I'm making a client. This client is connecting to a particular database. My database is called Hippity Hop. Right. And I could check my Hippity Hop database and see what's going on in there. I think my PG admin's broken. Whatever. PSQL. I could go to connect to Hippity Hop. I've connected to the Hippity Hop database, and I go maybe show me all the tables. There's artists, lyrics, and songs. And I might say, okay, well, show me what artists there are. And I'm going to select star from artists. And I've got a bunch of artists. I've got Kanye West, Drake, De La Soul, Nas, and Yasin Bey, aka Mos Def. Select star from songs. I got a couple songs. 5-minute freshen up, Gold Digger, Only One, Stronger, Ultralight Beam, all happen to be Kanye West songs. So they've got a foreign key here, column, all pointing to the artist with ID 1. And then they also have lyrics. So if I was to go select star from lyrics, I get like a bunch of this. It's got like a bunch of spaces and stuff in it. So if like I move this thing down, eventually I'm gonna start seeing lyrics in here, right? But there's just way too many for me to be like showing you. And so conceivably I might do something like select star from, and then like join Kanye West, like the artist Kanye West with whatever. I could write my queries in here if I wanted to. So I have this database. Now, I have the seeds for this database and the schema. Here's the schema. Create table artists. Artists have an ID, a name. That's really it. Table lyrics. Lyrics have an ID and some text. And songs. Songs have an ID, a title, an artist ID, and a lyric ID. There's like a one-to-one relationship between songs and lyrics. It's just I didn't want to have the lyrics mashed into the songs table because I like having those things separate. Because ideally I want to use this database maybe to do like analytics and stuff specifically just on the lyrics. And to me that's different than a song. And then there's a one-to-many relationship between artists and songs. And an artist might have many songs. In my database, I only have songs for Kanye West, the only artist that matters. If I look at my hip hop seeds, it's just a bunch of SQL stuff. Now you could run this line by line, right? But when you're trying to do this for your, say you want to run my demos, right? Or say just in the future, you want to run a bunch of SQL. When you connect to a particular database, you can go \i. I don't know, have you seen this before? Right, so in Postgres, you can go \i and then point to an SQL file and just run that script. That's the thing that you're like legally allowed to do. It's legal. No one's gonna yell at you. It's fine. Right. So I can do that for my schema and then my seeds. Right. So I might put that in the notes actually if you want to run this demo. Yep. So I have one for creating the database, schema, and I have one for filling the database. Right. So the important thing is if you go \i, you can run any SQL script. Right? And this is inside of PSQL. Right? So it's pretty cool because something that you might do is get a database from online, right, and want to load it up in. Or maybe you find a bunch of data, you just want to load it in. I went to SFU, and one of the things that I have access to is as an SFU student, at least I guess for a little while longer, is I can get access to any database that SFU makes public, such as open textbooks or the BBC sound effects database. Right? And, all this stuff. And some of these databases are SQL databases. Right? So I might be able to genuinely just download, D for dogs. There's no dogs database. I was hoping there'd be like a dogs database, but like some of these might be SQL databases. I can download them and then I would run the script to load it up into my local. So I have this hip hop database in here. I can start doing stuff with it. And part of the things that I want to do, or one of the things that I want to do with it, is I want to be able to use Postgres to pull things from it. So I've connected to the client. At least that's what I'm saying here. If I go node index.js, and I'm not in the right one. So this is PG demo. Nope. Back. PG demo. Okay. If I go node index.js, what I end up getting back is technically nothing. Nothing's happening. That's fine. It's totally great. There's no error. The client's connected and it's just never disconnected. Right? I could try and make maybe this thing wrong. So the hop database doesn't exist, and it might throw an error. Right? And then I go back and I fix it to hippity hop and I run it. It works. There's no error. That's great. Right? I want you to try and break this stuff. Right? I want you to see like how far you can stretch and bend things. Right? So here I know apparently I've connected to the hip hop database or the hippity hop database. Now, what I'm going to start doing is writing some queries. So let me just write a little something here. I could say that after I've connected, I want to console log all of the rows that result from this query. Select star from artists. Right? So this code looks almost identical to the stuff that I'd copied over. I just changed the query. Instead of being select text, I'm selecting star from artists and I'm console logging all the rows. And when I run this now, I'm going to have to stop and run. I'm getting all of the stuff from my database. Right? Kanye West, Drake, De La Soul, Nas, Yassine Bey, those are all the people in the database, and this is awesome because I'm seeing it in JavaScript land. Right? And every time I run this now, Kanye West, Drake, De La Soul, Nas, Yassine Bey. These are the same things that I would have gotten if I went into Postgres and I went hippity hop, select star from artists. Right? But I can write this right now, just again that SQL, I'm writing it in here. This afternoon, we're going to see us not writing actual SQL as much anymore. Right? Before right now, I've just offloaded the writing of the SQL from being inside of PSQL to being inside of Node. That's all that's happening. Right? Because this dude here, this client, that's as if Node fired up PSQL and took everything that we were writing it in there and piped it into there. Right? That's all it's doing, is it's just another different bridge to the same place. So I could say, hey, select star from artists. Again, if I run an error, right, my error stack's going to go off unless I say haha or something. When I run this now, I got haha back because I made a mistake. I can start getting funky with this because, again, any of the SQL that you've written before is going to carry over. I'm going to write a couple interesting things in here. Right? I am going to start off by maybe making a couple different queries, such as the first one here was select star from artists. This next one here, I'm going to say select star from artists where name equals, and then I'm going to start off by doing this. That has to be double quotes for me. Where name equals Kanye West. I'm just going to console log again. Okay, so the first thing that I got out was an array of all of the artists. The second one that I got was an array of just Kanye West. Right, because I said select from artists where name is Kanye West. Right, and I can get a little bit funkier here. I could do something like const name equals Kanye West. And maybe here I could turn this into a template string, because you know about template strings now. And I could take Kanye West, and I could say, hey, name. Right? And now I've parameterized this thing. I go ahead and I run this again. No visible change. That's the same thing. But the issue is, what if my name was not just Kanye West, but we're going to do, where name is Kanye West, close quote, semicolon, drop database, just drop database important. Drop database important info. Right, now, I don't know what this is going to do. I'm going to go into PSQL. I'm going to create a database important info. Now, I'm going to be straight up. Like, this may or may not work because I always get it wrong. But the thing is, if I have this database here, I have a database in here called important info right now. If I was to maybe go ahead and run this, like, this hasn't necessarily worked at the moment, maybe. Okay, it's just kind of crashed. It says unterminated quoted string. You know, I'm just going to quit. Cool. Okay, so it didn't actually drop the database, but there are cases where we might accidentally might accidentally have information that pops into the query that's being created, and I'm never going to get this right off the top of my head. Might accidentally do things like drop database or insert, right, or delete something or something like that might have snuck into one of our parameters, like our name, right? And that's where we need to be careful, and we need to do something called sanitizing our inputs. So you might have noticed that when I copied the code over, it looked slightly different, and it looked similar to what we had at the beginning of the day, where I had $1, and then I had an array with values. Because what we're going to do is have our values be passed in by an array, and let the node Postgres connector clean any input that comes through. Right? Just clean it and make sure that there's nothing dirty, nothing mean, nothing bad in there. Right? Before it runs the stuff. Right? So I think I have an example in the notes that I'm going to send you. I have an example of things that could go wrong. Yeah, but we're going to be using sanitization, and the thing that I wanted to show you is this thing called Bobby tables. Is anybody here into like XKCD? Do those letters mean anything to anyone here? No? Okay, so XKCD is like a comic. So just kind of let you read this for a sec. Like, hi, this is your son's school. Having some computer trouble. And, you know. Yeah. So, yeah, little Bobby tables. So if I was to write something like this, and I think I have an example of this somewhere in the notes. I just can't remember where I put them. If you have something like this in here, right, when somebody tries to insert Robert, for example, we'll go ahead and drop the entire student records table, right? And we need to learn to sanitize our database inputs, which turns out all you really need to do is let the PG module do that work for you, where you're going to parameterize things like $1, right? And then you're going to put stuff into an array next to it to fill in the blanks. So for example, if I need to select star from artists where name equals something, I'm going to put name in here. I'm going to say $1. Notice this array is 1 indexed. It's not 0 indexed. It starts from 1. Right? So if I was to run this right now and just console log what comes out, no change. I get Kanye West out here. Right? And I can go ahead and I can change this to Nas and run it again, and I get Nas. Now, the other funky thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to make this thing have the functions, the code wrapped. So I might have a function like get all artists, right? Instead of just having a single query being used a single time, I'm going to have a function called get all artists that's going to take a callback on what I should do with the results, right? So for example, select star from artists and then do this work here. Right? So I'm just going to get rid of this. Right? Same thing's going to happen with something like get artist by name. Is I'm going to wrap that in a function get artist by name. I'm going to say, hey, give me a callback, give me a name, and then here's what I'm going to do with that callback. And now I can use these functions. I can do things like say, hey, get all artists, and then once you have all the artists, so you have an error, and there's a bunch of rows as well, I could say console.log rows maybe. And I could do the same thing with get artist by name, and I could say, hey, the name is going to be that Kanye West over here, right? And then also console log the rows. But the nice thing about this is that I might have different names. Here's Kanye, and then here's Nas. And now this get artist by name functionality is reusable. I could go get Kanye, and I could also go get Nas. Now when I run this, it's nicely modularized, right? I've essentially made those data helpers that you had, right? So once I figure out this crazy query, this super intense thing that I need to do, I go ahead and I wrap it up in a function, get artist by whatever, and I never have to think about it again. Okay? We're getting closer to that idea of being declarative, like I was talking about this morning. Okay? Where when somebody reads this code, they say, oh, get artist by name. They don't even need to know what's going on underneath. They just know I have to get all the artists by name, and then here is what I do with them. Now, do I have other things in here that I want to show you? Not really. I mean, what I want to show you now is kind of an application of this in a bigger project. Right? This is what we've done right now, not really a project. We're just connecting to the database, making a couple queries, kind of toying around with it. Right? If I wanted to, I could write joins and all that. I just don't want to right now. Right? I have a big project called KanyeLyrics.com. It's the world's premier source for Kanye West lyrics. You're shaking your head. You're like, can't believe it. The world's premier source for Kanye West lyrics. KanyeLyrics.com. I have built out this demo. In a couple steps and I've put the steps out onto like in the README that you get with the lecture notes. So if you look at the README that you get with your lecture notes, this is what I'm going to work through right now. There's a bunch of branches, like a bunch of Git branches. I'm going to start at Kanye init. We're just going to see what that is. Okay, so I am going to save all the work that we've done. Git checkout -b lecture. Today's what, the 23rd? Okay, and I'm gonna check out to Kanye init. Okay, we're gonna see what Kanye init is in a second. I need to first of all have my Kanye thing running. So sorry, app.listen. So I'm gonna have a server running on port 3000, and then when it's running, it's just gonna say I'm listening on 3000. Okay. This is an app that's pretty similar to your Tweeter app merged with your Tiny app. Right? It's like a mash of your Tweeter or Tiny app if you were to dive into the code. We're not going to spend too much time actually looking at the code as the boilerplate, more at a high level. So I want to again stress, if this is overwhelming, that's great. That's the point. I just want you to see what's possible. Right? And then, so what's going on here at app.js level? This is kind of like your Tweeter. I have a bunch of middleware for dealing with forms and whatever, and also just logging to the screen. I have two routers. One's the index router and one's lyrics. We're going to see what those do in a second. Okay. And then I start my server listening. Okay. If I was to go into the particular routers, I'll see that there is, for index, a bunch of songs. For lyrics, also a bunch of songs. We're going to talk about what this code does in a second. But I'm going to start off just by straight up node cd Kanye and node app.js. Okay, so my server is running on 3000. It's a good time. Then I go localhost 3000. Okay, so this is KanyeLyrics.com v1, right? World's premier source for Kanye West lyrics. Now, you might recognize some of these songs. Right? Old MacDonald, Row, Row, Row Your Boat, Ba Ba Black Sheep. These are just some bangers. Like, these songs slap. And I wanted to save them somewhere. This one up here, off the Yeezus album. It took a while to grow on me, but you know, I'm good with it now. And if I look in, I can, like, if I click on them, I'll see different lyrics. Old MacDonald, How to Farm. Row, row, row your boat, gently down the stream. Ba Ba Black Sheep, Have You Any Wool? I remember that one, right? So I have these songs, I have these lyrics. There's some forms, like I can add lyrics, but if I add stuff, it doesn't really do anything right now, right? And same with if I go to edit a song, doesn't really do anything, right? And if I go to like delete a song, also doesn't do anything. Right? This is just a front end with no actual functionality so far. Right? What we're going to do is we're going to hook this up. Not only are we going to hook it up, we're going to do it so that when I turn off the server and turn it back on, that data persists. Right? We want to make that data persist. And we're doing this in steps. So if I was to look at the code, all of these things, all of these different pages, so for example, my index pages, right? Router get slash, so this would be for get slash the main page. It renders an index EJS view, and in the template variables, it throws all of these songs in here. Ideally, I would like to be able to get those songs with like a function, like something like get all songs. I'd like to be able to do something like that. And also, I'd also want this to be pulled from the database, right? Not pulled from this array, right? That's ideally where I want to be heading. Cool. So I'm going to move on to the next branch here, Kanye helpers. Okay, so I go over to the Kanye helpers branch. Here's the Kanye helpers branch. And what I'm going to notice about the Kanye helpers branch is that I've rewritten things a little bit, right? The main thing that's happened is that, say in my index router, right, I've made a function called getSongs that returns all of the songs in that array. Right? So now when I want to return all the songs, I go songs equals getSongs, right? Maybe I should go const songs equals getSongs, and then I pump that in. Right? Very little change, but here we're getting a little bit more, kind of less tied up in this thing, right? And more dependent on a helper function that can be used in different places. And I've done that in a couple other places too, if I look at my lyrics pages. So this is the router for getting a particular lyric for a song. So it would have been, if I click on this and see the lyrics, I've made a function called getSongById, which gets an ID. It filters the song database being that array, similar to your Tiny app, right? And then returns that found song. Right? Again, not really much of a change. The only thing that happens now is that when I want to get a particular song, I don't just pull it from the database. I go getSongById. Right? And if I go ahead and run this right now, which unfortunately for some reason I don't have. Looks like when I committed this last time, I deleted the app.listen part, so it never listens anymore. Oops. Also, as of this morning, I renamed my database to Hippity Hop, so I'm going to have to change that too in a sec. Run node app.js, server is running, I go refresh. Oh, whoops, 3000. I go refresh in a second when my server restarts. Nothing's changed functionally on the front, but you and I both know that there's data, like helpers, grabbing stuff, right? Even though it's not connected to a database. The next step that I have for myself, right, as I'm working up from this hard-coded database, the next step that I have is I want to make the helpers safe for async things. Meaning that I'm going to make my helpers take in callbacks. Right? My helpers are going to take in callbacks and then they can run those callbacks. Because if I look at my helpers at the moment, they just say get songs and immediately return. But I'm going to change it so that my helpers take callbacks in. So I'm just going to go create those files, get checkout, Kanye async safe. Oops. Right, and if I go look at what's happening now in the index.js, for example, my get songs now, it's going to take a callback and then it'll call that callback with the song database. Right? Meaning that the usage now of my get songs looks a little bit different. It's not just like it was before saying songs is get songs, and then it was like res.render with the, what was it, index, and then songs. Because, whoops. because this thing here, this could only work in a synchronous sense, right? But we want to make our code async safe. So I've changed it to say get songs, and then here is what you do with the songs. Notice that I wrote this with an error first callback, right? I wrote it with an error first callback just in case I want to use the errors on like the outside, and I'm saying, hey, if there's an error, I'm going to console log, hey, there's an error. Okay? Otherwise, the songs that have been returned, I'm going to pass them into the index as a template variable. Right? And I did the same thing over in the lyrics. My get song by ID has been changed a little bit over here to take a callback, right, and pass the stuff in. And over in the actual usage, right, now I'm nested in a little bit deeper. Right? We're getting closer to that idea of callback hell, I think you mentioned. Right? So we're making this stuff async safe. And if I ran this again, right, I'm going to once again see that there's no actual change, right, in the functionality. Right? But you and I both know that my functions, my helper functions, are async safe. Right? The next thing that I'm going to do is take all of my helper functions, all those helper functions, and I'm moving them over to a separate place. I'm moving them into like another file, another module, right, where I can keep all of my data helper stuff. Right? So it's not spread around. It's only where it's needed in one file, and then when I need it, I can import it from there. So if I go over to Kanye data modules here, and go over to check out Kanye data modules. When I check on what's actually going on with my files, I'll notice that my index.js no longer has that function getSongs being declared. Instead, I've moved it over to a different place. I've moved it over into data songs. Right, and then I look over on my data folder. There's a file called data songs. And what I've done here is I have my song database. And then I have my functions get song by ID and get songs. And the way that I've packaged these up is I've wrapped them up so that they get returned by another function. So I have one function called make songs data. And this function here is used to bake up those helper functions. It's going to bake them up. When I ask, hey, can you make the songs data functions, it'll bake them up and it'll return them. So what this here lets me do is when I need the getSongs function, I say require in that function, the make data songs function, make songs data function, and then run it. You see this part here? That's important. These two little characters here. Because everything that I've highlighted right now, that refers to this function. So if I run it, I get back these things here. And this is going to be useful for us in the next step, where when I make songs data, when I bake those functions, I'm going to need to put in a special ingredient. So here, if I need get songs, I can pull it in like this. If I need get song by ID, I can pull it in like this as well. Right? I have made this in two separate files, but for your tweeter, because this is what's going on with your tweeter with the data helpers, it all happens in like one place. If I was to now again stop and run, you'll see that it works the same way. Right? Nothing's changed. I've just moved stuff into another file. And we're going to look at the last two steps here, this one being the very important one. Kanye PG. I'm going to go ahead and check out Kanye-PG. And what's happening with Kanye-PG is, and I've done this in two separate places. Again, with your tweeter, it happens in one place. I, just for visibility, have put it into multiple places. But I've made it so that your client has to first connect to the hippity hop database. Has to connect to the database. And then when I require in the data helpers, notice the special ingredient that I'm passing in. Right? I'm passing in the actual client. So that get song by ID, or if I look at index, this get songs, these two functions here are actually tied to the client that I give it. Right, so I've edited my get song by ID and my get songs to actually have those SQL queries. Right, so this one here has an inner join, yada yada. This one here has select ID and title. They end up doing essentially the same thing as what they did before, but now it's connected to a Postgres database. Right, they're taking in some values, and I'm using the parameters here like that to sanitize it. Right, but again, the really important things are, first of all, it takes some callbacks because it's async safe. Right, I worked my way up to that. And also, I've baked the client into these data helpers. Right? Because conceivably, right, if I needed to, I could maybe have two databases. I could get songs, and I could also maybe get songs. Okay, well, I'm just going to comment this out for a second. From a cloud database or something, and this would be different. This would be different than this one over here, right? I've messed up the syntax a little bit. What I'm trying to show you is that I could make the same functions. Right, the same functions that are maybe connected to different databases. Right. Now the benefit of this is that when I look at the code down here, I see get songs. I don't actually see any of the SQL stuff. All the scary SQL stuff I can just shove away somewhere else, and that's good. Right. So with this done now, when I go ahead and I restart my server, so I'm going to go app.listen. Oops. Oh, no, you know what? When I go ahead and I restart my server, cool, and I go check out localhost 3000, I get apparently one song. Stronger. Well, I get something. I get a song. And when I connect to stuff, I get other songs over here. I think what happened is I just went ahead and I just deleted a couple of things. That if I was to just reseed my database, it would be fine. Let me just see, one sec. Data songs, lyrics, hippity hop, and index is, this should be hippity hop. There you go. Stop. So basically, I have a hip hop database and I have a hippity hop database, and they're two different databases. So here, this is now connected to that hip hop database that we were playing around with earlier that I was showing you. When I connect to this, I can get info. I can get info from it being my lyrics, and I've just nicely formatted them. Okay, and I'm going to want to go through and edit something. Right? If I wanted to edit, that's some new functionality that I need. Right? So I could go into my data helpers here, or I've called it data songs, and I could make a new function for update song. And I could tie that in now, right? I could tie that in using the rest of the knowledge that you have from working on Tiny App and Tweeter. Okay? In fact, I've already put in if you git checkout Kanye update slash Kanye update. If you check out the Kanye update now, hippity hop and hippity hop. Cool. I've added in some functionality that lets you go produced by Kanye West, Mike Dean, Timbaland, and Nima. This is my, that's my rapper name. And then every song that I'm on starts off with "It's your boy. You know who it is." And then I can save. Whoops. And I got "It's your boy. You know who it is." And the great thing about this is that if I stop this, right, I stopped it and I restart it, right, since it's connected to the Postgres database, when I refresh this, it will forever say, "It's your boy, you know who it is," right, forever. If you want to see the code for the updating, this is now hidden inside of data songs, where there's an update song by ID function, right? That again is just SQL, right? But I've put it in this data helper. So, in conclusion, right? Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. That's a weird way to end a lecture. To kind of finish this off, right? The idea is all the SQL stuff that you learned yesterday, that's still good. That's perfect, right? We're going to take that for right now, and I've pulled it in, right, to Node using something very similar to the Mongo connector, right? And in my case here, I thought it would be nice to package that stuff up and have little data helper functions, right? And I've shown you how those data helpers in your Tweeter got kind of baked with the client inside of them. Does that make sense? Right, so your data helpers are kind of like those cakes that people click coins into. Have you ever seen that before? Yeah, like coin cakes, and then you eat coins in there, right? Cool. Are there any questions? I don't think we're going to see more Kanye this afternoon. Maybe we will. I haven't decided yet. If there are questions, just let me know. I'm around for the rest of the day. I'm going to see you at 3, and have a great rest of the day. There might still be muffins downstairs, by the way. Yeah? At 3? We'll figure it out. Yeah, I'll message you and we'll figure it out. Yeah. Yeah, we'll go to JJ's, all of us. Yeah. All right.